expresses concern that despite decreases in the prices for a number of commodities on the world market, Guyanese consumers are not reaping the benefits.
President Bart Jagdeo is to unveil Guyana's position on avoided deforestation ahead of the Poland climate talks.
And DOCL has reduced the price for Tex cooking gas to $2,900 in most places.
The details of these and other stories, business news, and of course the latest sporting action into Diamond Mineral Water and NCN Sport News and more after these. Good evening, I'm Natasha Smith.
And I'm Paul Moore.
With this edition of the 6 o'clock news for today, Thursday, December 4, 2008. Here's what's happening. Paul.
Thanks, Natasha. Government says it is concerned that decreases in the prices for a number of commodities on the world market is not being felt by Guyanese consumers. This is according to Cabinet Secretary Dr. Roger Luncheon, who says Cabinet has issued a call for strict monitoring of businesses and actions against those who fail to reduce their prices. Edward Lane reports.
At his weekly post-cabinet media briefing, Cabinet Secretary Dr. Roger Luncheon said, as the economic crisis deepens, commodity prices on the world market are down, but local consumers are not reaping the benefits. He noted that the administration is deeply concerned about this.
Cabinet was briefed on the current situation, and there were some cause for alarm. Consumers were not predictably nor consistently benefited from these price increases.
Dr. Luncheon noted that the prices for bread, chicken, fuel and transportation continue to attract the attention of government.
Cabinet called for strict monitoring by the relevant bodies and even is willing to consider the name and shame approach.
Currently, the price for chicken is increasing, while despite a reduction in the price for flour, bread prices remain constant. On the question of some minibus operators still charging fares that reflect an increase, the Cabinet Secretary says while associations may have agreed on reducing the fares, some operators are still bent on ripping off consumers.
Bus fares, I hesitate to pronounce authoritatively, but drawing from Cabinet's rather forceful position on Tuesday, I doubt the minister could have, without making this evident at the cabinet meeting, agreed to increases or the continuation of the increases in the minibus fares.
Some routes are still reflecting an increase in the bus fare, while routes along the east coast are not catered for, and operators are using the opportunity to make demands on commuters. Edward Lane, the 6 o'clock news.
The Demerara Oxygen Company has announced price reductions for the 9 kilogram or 20-pound cylinder, which will now be retailed for $2,900. This is the retail price set for Georgetown, West Coast and West Bank of Demerara. East Coast and East Bank of Demerara, the price will now be $3,000 in all other areas. Chief Executive Officer Shamir Hussain says the reduction is due to the significant drop in oil prices on the world market. Hussain says the efficiency gain from the recently installed automated LPG filling plant at Eccles has also contributed to the reduction in price. President Bart Jagdeo is to unveil government's position on avoided deforestation at the International Conference Center tomorrow. This has been disclosed by Cabinet Secretary Dr. Roger Luncheon, who highlighted the importance of this event ahead of climate change talks in Poland. More in this report.
President Bart Jagdeo has been advocating for market-based mechanisms to reward avoided deforestation for some time now, and after lengthy consultations and assessments, he will be presenting the main features of a technical report based on Guyana's position to key stakeholders at the International Conference Center. Cabinet Secretary Dr. Roger Luncheon says the importance of Guyana's vast forestry resources can no longer be underestimated.
As you know, Guyana has very high forest coverage, and its standing forests have been subjected to historically low rates of deforestation. As you also know, standing forests in this era of climate change and global warming is no longer questioned as the public good.
He says it is time for Guyana's call for compensation for the protection of this invaluable resource to be heeded.
Consequently, Guyana expects that its contribution in maintaining its standing forests, contributions toward economic conservation, environmental conservation, would be treated fairly in the marketing of environmental services in combating CO2 emissions.
Recently, Guyana received funding from the World Bank's Foreign Carbon Partnership Facility to prepare a mechanism readiness plan. In this regard, government has partnered with Conservation International to undertake a feasibility study. The study assesses several factors, including carbon stock, institutional and policy enabling mechanisms, and financial potential. Meanwhile, the President is expected to advocate Guyana's position on avoided deforestation at the upcoming climate change talks in Poland. The meeting comes midway between the conference in Bali, which saw the launch of negotiations on strengthened international action, and Copenhagen, at which these are set to conclude. And Guyana is hoping that its position can be included in any post-Kyoto Protocol framework. Reporting for the 6 o'clock news, I'm Sharda Lal.
Thank you, Sharda. The government has signaled its intention to commence issuing licenses to potential radio station operators. This was highlighted by Presidential Advisor on Governance, Gail Teixeira, during a debate in the National Assembly last evening. Edward Lane reports.
The document, which was released last evening, said the cost of energy, transportation and food are expected to slow down in 2009. However, governments of the region may not be able to ease monetary policy in the face of the currency depreciation. The document says the Caribbean remains vulnerable to the global credit crunch, particularly a sharper setback in capital inflows and further decline of external demand. Net food importers were the most affected by the rising prices, causing worsening in their terms of trade and current account balances. The report says the Caribbean has large food exports to South America, but imports about 3.7% of its GDP in food, a figure above what is exported. The study says the emerging financial crisis has been one factor in this regard, as speculators started to retreat from commodity markets to salvage assets positions in the financial system. Shifts in the supply and demand for the grains have also pushed prices downwards and may continue like this in 2009 since the production of cereal has recovered. The sharp decrease in the price of oil may weaken incentives to further increase biofuel production, which had been an important factor in pushing up the demand for grains in recent years. However, the average price levels for rice, corn and wheat, the three most consumed grains, will still be substantially higher in 2008 compared to 2007, but are expected to decline in 2009. The observed high price instability, however, may be detrimental to long-term investment in the production of grains and could sustain conditions of food insecurity unless actions are taken quickly. Edward Lane, the 6 o'clock news.